Yet Another Zombie Survivors has reached version 1.00, and I'll be honest, I took a lot of beatings from this game before understanding what actually matters. There were several lost runs, wrong upgrades, and that feeling of, why did I die so early again? Until I finally started noticing the patterns and mechanics that make all the difference. In this video, I've put together 10 advanced tips I wish I had known from the start. These are things that completely changed my performance in 1.00. If you are also getting beaten up by the game, or just want to avoid the same mistakes I made, stick around until the end. I'm Matthew, and let's dive in. At the beginning of my journey, I made a classic mistake. I'd run desperately along the edges of the map, thinking I was saving time. But in practice, I was trapping myself. When the zombies closed in, I had nowhere to go, and I died in seconds. Getting beaten up like that is what made me realize staying glued to the wall is asking to be crushed. Then came the turning point. I started staying close to the center of the map. And man, the difference is brutal. In the center, you have 360 degrees of space to maneuver. When the horde presses from one side, you can back up, pivot, carve out a path without getting stuck. This not only gives you more reaction time, but also lets you better position your attacks and take advantage of your squad's synergies. This tip becomes even more crucial in the biolab, the new circular map in 1.0. Besides the waves of zombies, you also have to deal with toxic zones that appear randomly. If you're on the edges, you can end up trapped between the enemies and the contaminated area. And no upgrade can save you then. In the center, you have more freedom to reposition and avoid both zombies and environmental damage. Today, this is one of the first things I apply in every run. As soon as the match starts, I position myself right in the middle of the map and avoid staying glued to the walls as much as possible. It might sound simple, but it's one of those mindset shifts that separates those who just survive from those who truly master the game. And if I, who took so many beatings, managed to learn this, you can too, and you'll progress much faster. Early on, I simply grabbed whatever upgrade appeared on screen, without thinking about my pool composition. Result: a generic build with no synergy, and I always felt like I was just surviving instead of dominating the run. That's when I started studying the ban system and things began to make sense. The idea is simple yet powerful. If you want to build a purely ability-based setup, banning the starting weapons of secondary survivors is essential. That's because every weapon you remove from the pool mathematically increases your chances of finding the upgrades that actually matter. In this case, max-tier items and abilities. It's a technique experienced players have been using for a while, and in 1.0 it became even more accessible. And here's the detail many people haven't noticed yet. The first banish on every screen is now free. This is a direct invitation from Poppy Works itself to manipulate your pool aggressively right from the start of the run. Not using that free ban is literally throwing money away, or rather, throwing a strategic advantage in the trash. Today, I never start a run without mentally planning which secondary survivors' weapons I'm going to cut right away. This has given me much consistent builds, with high-tier upgrades showing up much more frequently. If I used to rely on luck to get a good build, now I force the hand of RNG in my favor. And it's precisely this kind of control that separates people who just play from those who actually understand the game. If there's one thing I learned the hard way in Yet Another Zombie Survivors 1.0, it's that reaching the final minutes without crowd control is synonymous with certain death. I've lost incredible runs with seemingly solid builds, simply because I was caught off guard by a late-game horde I couldn't hold back. That's when I realized ice isn't optional, it's practically mandatory if you want to survive until the end. The secret lies in the engineer and medic's freeze abilities. They paralyze even bosses, which opens up a perfect window for you to bring in high-piercing weapons like the laser or blaster, and simply clear the screen without the risk of getting run over. It's a combo that sounds simple on paper, but in practice completely transforms the rhythm of the run. And here is the part few explored deeply. When you stack 10 or more ice tags, the permafrost effect becomes absurdly strong. Permafrozen enemies are not only paralyzed, in many cases, the damage you deal in this state can instantly kill them, including certain bosses. It's a level of control that completely changes how you face the final minutes, which are normally the nightmare of any run. Today, when I build a setup thinking about late game or endless, the combination of engineer with medic or huntress, backed by ice items, is practically my default choice. It's one of the strongest builds I've tested in the game, and if you haven't tried this ice crowd control yet, get ready to feel the difference as early as your first few runs. I wish I had figured this out long before taking so many hits. One of the biggest lessons I learned after multiple lost runs was to value the right items when opening supply chests. In the beginning, I always went after anything that had plus damage in the description, thinking it was the most direct path to getting strong, only to realize, somewhere around the final minutes, that my damage wasn't scaling enough, and the fault lay precisely in not prioritizing the right items at the right moment. That's when I understood the real value of Sugar Rush and Buckshot Roulette. Sugar Rush gives you a massive attack speed boost, which not only increases your DPS, but also improves the overall fluidity of your build. Meanwhile, Buckshot Roulette brings instant reload chance and weapon cooldown reduction, two effects that together completely transform the rhythm of your attacks. These two items have an advantage many people ignore. They scale much better into the late game than raw damage bonuses, while flat damage becomes less and less relevant as enemies get beefier. Attack speed and critical strike chance keep delivering value every single second of the run. That's why, whenever I open a chest, my priority is to secure at least one of these two. Sometimes both, if the build allows. Of course, this isn't an absolute rule. If you are focused on a purely ability-based build, other items might make more sense. But for most weapon builds, prioritizing Sugar Rush and Buckshot Roulette in chests is one of the decisions that most impacted my late-game performance. It took me a while to learn this, but now it's something I apply in practically every run, and the difference in final damage is absurd. One of the things that cost me the most runs was not paying attention to temporary buffs scattered on the floor. I'd run around desperately, grabbing everything in sight, and often activate a stone skin at the wrong time, wasting that precious window of invulnerability. Only after dying countless times in situations that could have been saved did I realize, monitoring these buffs is just as important as choosing the right upgrades. Stone Skin in particular is one of those items that can save your entire run if used with the right timing. It leaves you invulnerable for a few seconds, which is perfect for those situations when you are cornered, out of options, or need to reposition your build in the middle of chaos. The problem is that if you pick it up mindlessly, you might end up activating the buff ahead of time and leave yourself exposed right when you need it most. And here comes another lesson I learned the hard time. Never collect magnets immediately. Leaving them on the ground is a classic strategy, and the correct one, that lets you keep a plan B for when things get tight. When you need to level up fast to clear the screen, recover abilities, or simply turn the tide, picking up all the magnets at once generates an XP spike that can completely alter the course of a run. Today, I play with much more awareness of what's on the ground. I keep an eye on stone skins, plan when to trigger them, and leave magnets accumulated as a strategic reserve. It seems like a small detail, but it's precisely this kind of management that separates those who just survive from those who truly master the late game. It took me a while to learn this, but now it's something I apply in every run, and it has saved me from deaths that previously seemed inevitable. I used to treat map arrows as if they were all the same. An arrow popped up, I chased it, red, green, yellow, didn't matter. The result? I ran straight into heavy bosses and dense hordes with a squad that barely had two decent survivors. I died early, lost runs that could have gone far, and didn't understand why. Then it clicked. Red arrows aren't an invitation, they're a warning. They signal that a heavy horde or a boss is approaching, and if your team isn't stabilized yet, chasing that down is suicide. I learned to ignore the red ones until I felt my build had enough crowd control, damage, and survivability not to get crushed in seconds. Meanwhile, green and yellow arrows became my true growth plan. The greens are an SOS to recruit survivors, and in the early and mid-game, that's top priority. More allies mean more damage, more synergies, and more build options. Yellows lead to chests and items, which are essential to scale your upgrade pool and ensure you don't fall behind in power. Today, I play with much more map reading and less impulse. I set red arrows aside until I feel my squad is truly ready, and focus on following the greens and yellows to dictate the pace of my progression. It sounds simple, but this mindset shift saved me from countless premature deaths and helped me go much further in runs. It took me a while to learn this, but now it's something I apply in every match, and the difference in my performance is brutal. In version 1.0, I think the biggest mistake is building your squad thinking only about which characters deal the most individual damage. The true potential appears when you start looking at cross-synergies. Each survivor has 4 connections, 3 related to their abilities and 1 independent, and this completely changes how you plan a composition. Instead of picking 3 strong characters in isolation, the ideal approach is to build a team where abilities, tags, and passive effects work together throughout the entire match. That's why the Ranger has become such an interesting piece to build a team around. Aside from bringing his own tools, like fear, companions, and healing for allies, he also provides crit and luck bonuses to the squad. In practice, this makes characters like Huntress, Ghost, and Mechanic make much better use of chests, critical hit effects, and ability procs. The Ranger doesn't necessarily have to be the character who wipes everything out alone. Often, his value lies in making the other two survivors function above normal. A composition I really like is Engineer plays Ranger plus Huntress, Ghost, or Mechanic. The Engineer provides a very safe foundation to control the Horde, while the Ranger improves the group's overall consistency, and the third character adds a new layer of damage or utility. In a crit-focused setup, for example, the Huntress naturally pairs with the Ranger's bonus, whereas Ghost can turn that advantage into a more aggressive approach focused on bosses and close-quarters combat. Version 1.0 itself increased the number of available synergies precisely to allow deeper combinations between characters. But the idea isn't simply to copy a composition and expect it to work in every situation. If you prefer safety, Tank plus Pyro plus SWAT or Medic might be a more comfortable choice. If you want to explore abilities and area control, Engineer, Mechanic, and Ranger offer a different direction. I recommend opening the Upgrades menu before the match, checking which synergies are available, and choosing your leader according to the run's objective. When you start thinking about tags, proc activations, luck, crit, and roll coverage all at once, you stop building a good group and start building a true synergy machine. It isn't always worth distributing all damage bonuses equally among the three characters. In military training, weapon damage and ability damage increases fully benefit only one survivor, while the others receive only a fraction of that bonus. If you try to buff everything at once, you might end up creating a team where no one truly reaches their maximum potential. That's why I like to divide the team by roles. One character takes charge of weapon damage, like the SWAT using a sniper or grenade launcher. Another focuses on ability damage, like the Engineer with electrocution and turrets, or the Huntress with arrow rain. This way, every point invested has a clear objective, and you can tell much faster which character is carrying each part of the build. Military training is a permanent progression and can be reset, so this specialization can also be adapted according to the map and game mode chosen. The third survivor, in my opinion, doesn't need to directly compete for top damage. They can fulfill a support role, boosting crit, luck, healing, movement speed, fire rate, or cooldown reduction. This type of character seems less impressive at the start of the match, but makes a huge difference when they start improving the consistency of the two main damage dealers. After all, a build that deals massive damage on paper is useless if it takes too long to activate abilities, misses experience, or fails to survive until the end of the run. An example would be using SWAT as the weapon specialist, Engineer as the ability specialist, and Medic or Ranger as support. That way, the SWAT capitalizes on weapon damage bonuses, the Engineer turns ability damage and cooldown reduction into an area control machine, while the third character boosts survivability and enhances group efficiency. I view this strategy as a way to avoid power dilution. Instead of having three mediocre characters, you create two very strong carries and one support that makes both of them work even better. One trap I noticed is investing in weapon attack speed, thinking any weapon will fire much faster. This attribute can be excellent, but its effect heavily depends on how the weapon works. It shines mostly on magazine-based weapons, where you can fire more projectiles before needing to reload. For single-shot weapons, instant reload weapons, or abilities, the gain tends to be much less universal. Therefore, in most of my builds, I prefer to start by looking for weapon cooldown reduction. Cooldown reduction decreases the interval between weapon activations, and isn't limited just to the firing speed within a single magazine. This makes the attribute much more consistent for weapons without magazines and for cyclical attacks, besides helping maintain steady damage throughout the entire match. Version 1.0's item documentation clearly distinguishes cooldown, attack speed, and magazine as separate functions. The same reasoning applies to abilities. If you're using Engineer with turrets or electrocution, or Huntress with arrow rain, what truly matters is being able to trigger those abilities as fast as possible. In that case, ability cooldown reduction usually offers a more direct return than trying to increase attack speed, since many abilities don't fire projectiles continuously like an automatic weapon. Reducing wait times can also allow a turret to be redeployed even before the previous one disappears, maintaining pressure on the Horde. The ideal approach is combining this cooldown reduction with items and badges that trigger effects upon critical hits, kills, or ability activations. This way, each damage cycle helps accelerate the next one, creating a sort of snowball effect. You attack, get kills, reduce wait times, and attack even faster. I'd only prioritize attack speed when the build genuinely relies on a large magazine weapon like an SMG or minigun. Outside of that, cooldown is usually the safest choice to keep weapons and abilities running at a steady rhythm. At high difficulties, I started viewing movement speed in a completely different way. Early on, it feels tempting to invest everything in damage, thinking that eliminating zombies quickly will solve any problem. But in hardcore, endless, torments, and especially the biolab, survival depends much more on your ability to reposition the squad before the horde cuts off all escape routes. The biolab has a circular shape, toxic vapors on the edges, and decontamination zones that force the player to move constantly. What most changed my mind was realizing that speed isn't just for running away. It also lets you collect experience more safely, reach power-ups, slip through gaps between enemies, and keep zombies grouped in the direction you want. When difficulty ramps up, enemies appear in waves, and elites start taking up more and more space. If your character moves slowly, any positioning mistake can become a death sentence. In endless mode, this pressure gets even higher, because the danger keeps scaling as the match drags on. Even so, I don't recommend abandoning firepower completely. An extremely defensive build, focused almost solely on invulnerability like an average ninja, might dodge a few hits, but might fail to eliminate enemies before they pile up. For me, the ideal balance is keeping enough damage to clear a path and investing enough movement speed to never get cornered. The question shouldn't just be, can I kill this horde? But also, can I get out of here if the next wave hits right now? My rule is always to keep a planned escape route. Before grabbing experience or fighting a boss, I look at which direction I can escape to and avoid sticking to the edges, especially in the biolab. If the danger zone starts closing in, don't wait until the last second. Move early, cross the safe area, and keep attacking while you reposition. In torments and the most severe difficulties, movement speed doesn't replace damage, healing, or armor. But it's the attribute that allows all those other resources to keep working when the screen starts getting completely overrun by zombies.